yoga as taught by Swami Vivekananda and his master, Sri Ramakrishna, and how it can help us in our spiritual life, how it can bring us deeper in our spiritual life, how we can make progress in our spiritual life. Actually, it's an interesting idea. Not all religious traditions have this idea of spiritual progress, isn't it? For some traditions, you believe, and that's enough. And at the time of death, you will go to heaven, or maybe to the other place, depending. But in Vedanta, we have this idea that we're gradually diving deeper. We're uncovering the veils that obscure the divine from our vision. We are gradually purifying ourselves. We are improving our characters, and we're moving forward to the divine. So this idea of yoga, Vivekananda really brought back to the awareness of all seekers, and brought to this country this wonderful idea of yoga. So I have picked some beautiful quotes from Vivekananda on yoga. So he says, the ultimate goal of all humankind, the aim and end of all religions is but one: reunion with God. Interesting, he doesn't say union, he says reunion, as if there's been a little bit of a separation. Actually, now I can move it a little farther, no? Is it too loud now? Is it okay? You can hear that we are seeking to rejoin with our true home, with our own source, and that's the goal of all humankind, says Vivekananda. Whatever religion we may be following, whatever path we may be practicing, whatever spiritual practices we may be doing. And he says, or reunion with God, or what amounts to the same, with the divinity which is every human being's true nature. So there's the two different ways of understanding it. On the one hand, I am an individual soul, and I'm seeking to find that infinite divine reality and to attain reunion with it. Or I know that my own true nature is divine and infinite, and I'm seeking to realize it, to attain reunion with my own divinity. So he points out that ultimately it amounts to the same thing. And while the aim is one, the method of attaining may vary with the different temperaments of people. This is one of the geniuses of Vivekananda. There's not one path. As many seekers, so many paths. Each path is unique. So in some ways, it's difficult for us to have a meeting like this, a retreat on yoga, because for each one of us, the path is different. It's not one path. And Swami Vivekananda, of course, envisioned categorized the different types of spiritual practices into four main departments. You can say four main channels, or four main four main lanes, we can say. And yet, they're not fixed in stone. They're fluid a little bit, and we see how they actually all support each other. But let's see what he says about that. He says, both the goal and the methods employed for reaching it are called yoga. So yoga refers not only to, it refers both to the goal of union, and to our striving, our attempts to attain that goal. And he points out, which we probably have read many times, it is a word derived from the same Sanskrit root as the English yoke, meaning to join. Yuj is the root word. So yoga, just think, the English word yoke comes from the same root. So how actually almost the same. The K and the G are very close, to yoke, to bring together, to attain union. So to join us to our reality, God. There are various such yogas or methods of union, but the chief ones are Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. Of course, there are so many definitions of yoga. In the Raja Yoga, the first, second aphorism of the Raja Yoga, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, defines yoga how? Yes, Chitta Vritti Nirodha, that all the waves in the mind could become completely stilled. So in the yoga of meditation, Swamiji has given it a little twist. The traditional interpretation of yoga in the meditation path is complete absence of any disturbance in the mind, whatever. That is yoga. So, but we're taking it primarily as union and as the path to union. Vivekananda says, every being must develop according to his or her own nature. So you like to sit closer? There's another seat here, there's a seat here. You want to hide, huh? Yeah. If you sit in front, you'll see me. There's a seat right up here. People are afraid. Backbenchers, no? All right. So this is how Swamiji, and he was writing to an American disciple explaining this. He says that the different forms of yoga that we teach are adapted to the different natures and temperaments of people. And we classify them in the following way under 4 heads. And then he describes these 4 heads as Karma Yoga, the manner in which one realizes one's own divinity through works and duty. Bhakti Yoga, the realization of the divinity through devotion to and love of a personal God. 3, Raja Yoga, the realization of the divinity through the control of mind. And 4, Jnana Yoga, the realization of one's own divinity through knowledge. It's beautiful how he points each one is the method of realizing one's own divinity. And work, love, mastery over the mind. Swami Swahananji used to say, people don't like the word control of mind. It sounds like mind control, something like somebody else is controlling your mind. So he would say, we can use the term master your mind. To become a master, we all want to be masters. So rather than say mind control, as if I have to control it, rather we become masters of our own minds. Right now, our minds are masters of us. Oftentimes it seems like. So in the Raja Yoga is the science of becoming masters of our own minds. So this idea of 4 yogas is somewhat arbitrary, but I think Vivekananda saw that that we each have these 4 different elements of our psyche, of our being. We are all active. We have a restlessness. We like to do things, some people more than others, but we all have to do things and we're active. And we all have an emotional side to our being. We love our family members. I hope we love our family members. If we don't, there's something that we're in trouble. So we have that emotional side. Then we have an intellectual side. We want to know. We all want to know, isn't it? Inquiring minds want to know was the byline of a supermarket tabloid, the National Enquirer. But it's true. We want to know. That's part of us. We want to know. So we love. We want to love. We want to know. And we're active. We want to do. And then, of course, there's also, most people have also this need for some quiet. There's a contemplative side. Now, that side is least developed oftentimes, and we see that nowadays with these devices that we all have in our pockets, rather than be alone with oneself, everyone is looking for distraction and getting our strained thumb from pushing too much on the screen. But also these different aspects of our being are all addressed through these different yogas. Of course, in the Gita, every chapter is considered as a separate yoga. From Arjuna Vishada Yoga, the yoga of Arjuna's grief, of turning our grief into yoga, to the Moksha Sannyasa Yoga, the yoga of liberation and renunciation. But how it turns everything, actually, the hint here is that everything, every part of our life can be and is to be, if we are seekers, is to be turned into spiritual practice, is to bring us forward on our goal. And that can turn every part of life into a joy when it's all turned that way. Now, something very interesting that Vivekananda does, he calls yoga a science. Ordinarily, we think science is one thing and religion is another. And the old idea was that they don't meet, and science has delivered some pretty hard blows on the traditional religious viewpoint, because the old idea that God created the world out of nothing and created everyone, created this world exactly as it is, but then Darwin discovered evolution, and you can't deny it. If you have a rational mind and you study it, you can't deny that also. So how does Vivekananda call yoga a science? Let me read a little from this beautiful quote. The teachers of the science of yoga declare that no person can be religious until one has the same perceptions oneself, the perceptions of the Absolute. Yoga is the science which teaches us how to get these perceptions. It is not much use to talk about religion until one has felt it. What right has a person to say he has a soul if he does not feel it, or that there is a God if she does not see him? If there is a God, we must see him. If there is a soul, we must perceive it. Otherwise, it is better not to believe. What strong words. If we say that I have a soul, but I don't perceive it, that makes us a hypocrite. He says it is better to be an outspoken atheist than a hypocrite. Human beings want truth. We want to experience truth for ourselves. When we have grasped it, realized it, felt it within our heart of hearts, then alone, declare the Vedas, would all doubts vanish, all darkness be scattered, and all crookedness be made straight. So, this science, what sense is yoga a science? Science, I think in this sense, in the practice of science, and many of you, probably most of you, come from scientific background, isn't it? Science can be, in science, we propose a hypothesis, and then we test it, and we come to a conclusion. And then we publish it. And somebody else, somewhere else says, I doubt it. I'm going to try. And in the laboratory, they bring the same ingredients together and do the same experiment. And either they can verify, they find that, yes, it's true. I'm getting the same result. Or they say, I'm not getting this result. This is false. So science is verifiable. The scientific claims are verifiable. If I look through the telescope and I see a galaxy at a certain point in the sky, and I tell everybody, I've seen it, but you can't see. How ridiculous. Another astronomer will say, well, tell me the coordinates, and I'll look through my telescope and see if I can see it. And she also finds it and says, okay, yes, verifiable. So in this sense, yoga is a science, because yoga gives us the method for attaining true peace, for realizing our true nature, for attaining union with God. And the sages and the teachers of yoga never say, see, I have realized, but you can't. They say, this is the method. I use this method. You try and see. You try, you put it into practice. Do something and see. and you will find. And so that's how the tradition has been strengthened over the millennia by all the sages and the saints who have practiced these practices and said, yes, they work. Swamiji says very nicely, if you want to become an astronomer and sit down and cry, astronomy, astronomy, it will never come to you. A certain method must be followed. You must go to an observatory, take a telescope, study the stars and planets, and then you will become an astronomer. Each science must have its own methods. I could preach you thousands of sermons, but they would not make you religious until you practiced the method. These are the truths of the sages of all countries, of all ages, of men and women, pure and unselfish, who had no motive but to do good to the world. Okay, so the scientists who are teaching this, first of all, they are pure and unselfish with only a motive to do good, and they all declare that they have found some truth higher than what the senses can bring to us, and they invite verification. They ask us to take up the method and practice honestly. And then, if we do not find this higher truth, we will have the right to say there is no truth in the claim. But before we have done that, we are not rational in denying the truth of their assertions. Isn't that beautiful? We have no right to say it's all hogwash unless we've tried it, unless we've put it to the test. We've put their claims to the test. So Swamiji says we must work faithfully using the prescribed methods and light will come. So Vivekananda emphasizes always this practice. The religion is not believing, it is being and becoming. It is becoming what we are actually, So it seems to me that Vivekananda's method of teaching yoga is first to tell us what we are, which is falls in the practice of jnana yoga. But he also points out that to understand the teachings of jnana, to understand that our true nature is infinite consciousness and bliss, that we can understand. But to actually realize it is extremely difficult. So Vivekananda first presents jnana to us, and then he presents the other practices which bring us to that point, which make us ready for actually putting jnana into real practice, because jnana is very tough to actually practice it. So shall we touch? I was thinking I can touch briefly on each of the yogas, give a little more discussion by Vivekananda. The yoga of wisdom. Start with the yoga of wisdom, jnana yoga. And he tells us that the word jnana means knowledge. It is derived from the root jna, to know. The same word from which your English word to know is derived. Actually, it's wonderful to think how actually English language, there are many words that we find Sanskrit correlates. And like, for instance, the word Agni means fire. But what do you do when you light a fire? You ignite it. Agni, ignite, very close. You have that G-N-I form, only it's Agni or ignite. So these you find these little clues. So jnana, to know, K-N or J-N. So jnana yoga is yoga by means of knowledge. And what is the object of jnana yoga? Freedom, says Vivekananda. Freedom, moksha. Freedom from our imperfections. Freedom from the misery of life. Why are we miserable? We are miserable because we are bound. What is the bondage? The bondage is of nature. Who is it that binds us? We ourselves. So he's painting us this picture of that powerful line in the Song of the Sannyasin. Thine only is the hand that holds the rope that drags thee on. It is our hand that hold. It is we. It is the ignorance here which obscures our view. It is we who are in bondage. And then he says so beautifully, cease lament, let go thy hold. If we can let go, then we attain the freedom which is our true nature. So Swamiji says, when I am bound by nature, by name and form, by time, space, and causality, I do not know what I truly am. This is our condition. We're enmeshed in this world, in our bodies. We're following the clock, and we know that if we put our hand in the fire, it will be burned. And here we are in this room, in space, in time, and we do not know what we truly are. But even in this bondage, my real self is not completely lost. I strain against the bonds. One by one they break, and I become conscious of my innate grandeur. Our true nature is grand. We have a grandeur. That idea of regaining our kingdom, our own kingdom, our infinite nature. I attain to the clearest and fullest consciousness of myself. I know that I am the infinite spirit, the master of nature, not its slave. Beyond all differentiation and combination, beyond space, time, and causation, I am that I am. So that is, and of course we know in the practice of Jnana Yoga especially, but it applies in all of them. Swamiji reminds us that the different steps that we find. First, we have to hear about them. We have to hear about the truth. We have to hear about our own true divine nature. And then we have to think about them. We have to reason the thoughts out, impress them on our minds. And finally, we have to meditate on them, realize them, until at last they become our whole life. So this is the three-stage process of Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Yes. So he's skipping the Sanskrit terms when he's talking to the Western audiences. Sometimes he skips the Sanskrit terms. But this idea that these ideas become our whole life, and then realization becomes realization. It is being and becoming, not hearing or acknowledging. It is the whole soul becoming changed into what it believes. That is religion. Now, there's an interesting passage I came across this morning in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, which Sri Ramakrishna is speaking about this idea of jnana. And he says, all may attain to jnana, all may attain to wisdom, to knowledge. And then he talks about these two entities. There's the jivatma, the individual soul. That is our soul, who we are with our subtle body, our subtle mind is there, the ego sense. And then there's Paramatma, the supreme self, which is one and non-dual and infinite. And all we have many jivatmas in this, connected with each one of us has a separate jivatma, and yet Paramatma is one. How to understand it? And then he says, pray. All may attain union with that supreme self, with that Paramatma. I put it in Bengali, which is why I'm stumbling a little bit. He says, Prarthana karo. This is very interesting because ordinarily in the path of knowledge, we don't think of prayer, right? We think of discerning and analyzing and then meditating and realizing. And here he says, Prarthana karo, to pray that সেই পরমাত্মার সঙ্গে সব জীবেরই যোগ হতে পারে. All may attain union, may attain yoga with the Paramatma, with the Supreme Self. Lectio Divina. That's a practice of holy reading, though, sacred reading. Lectio Divina. Lectio is reading, and Divina, it's a practice of the Christian contemplatives of how to read Scripture. Not just like reading it to understand it, but reading it to get inspiration. And it's also a beautiful practice. We had a Catholic father who shared that practice with us in Hollywood once. It's a nice point. And then he gives this example. The gas, every house in Calcutta has a connection for gas. But you won't get the gas unless you go to the gas company and apply to the gas company. If you apply to the gas company, you can get the connection turned on and you'll get gas. So just like that, you can go. And it's funny because he uses the English words, of course. He says, gas company kache gas pawa jai. You can get gas at the gas company. And then he says, arji koro. This is interesting because the word arji, it means that you put in your request, but it also, one of the translations of arji is to pray. So it means both to pray and here to put in your petition for apply for a gas connection. And then he says, the arrangement will be made for gas. The light will shine in your house. And then he says, Shaldahe Apishache, the office of the gas company is in Sialda. You can go and just apply. And everybody laughs. So, but this guarantee that we all can attain this knowledge. But he suggests prarthana, and a little later we'll talk more about that, because that is actually one of Sri Ramakrishna's main teachings. Is not meditation, it's not japa, it's not reading scriptures, it's prayer. Actually, it's prayer. He comes back again and again to that. So a little later we'll talk about what we might call the yoga of prayer. Okay, let's touch now on the yoga of love. And this is from the famous quote from the beginning of Swami Vivekananda's Bakti Yoga, which is, to me, is so touching. He says, Bhakti Yoga is a real, genuine search after the Lord, a search beginning, continuing, and ending in love. So it's a clear definition. It's a search through love. But what kind of love? Then as we study Bhakti Yoga, we get into what kind of love is the love that takes us to God. And then he describes the experience of that intense love for God. One single moment of the madness of extreme love to God brings us eternal freedom. But that extreme love, it's a kind of madness. When we get touched by that love that is so strong that it actually brings us to the divine, then it's a kind of madness. Bhakti, devotion, says Narada in his Bhakti aphorisms, is intense love to God. When a person gets it, he or she loves all and hates none and becomes satisfied forever. There's a little hint here. If there's anybody who we hate, if we feel hatred towards anybody, then we haven't got this love yet. We haven't got genuine devotion, because the divine dwells in every heart. If there's one person that we feel hatred for, then we're cutting out a part of God from our minds. It's a real challenge, I know, because we have in our families and our workplaces, we have troublesome people, and they're hard to love, no doubt. But at least we can start by not hating them, cultivating indifference. right? Rather, all right, if I can't love you maybe, but I don't have to hate. Hate is a very strong, active feeling of opposition towards someone. All right, let me start with indifference. Gradually, the more our hearts expand, we shall be able to love. In Vivekananda's words, I could love even the devil himself if there were any. If someone is hurting you, yes, yes. 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 Well, yeah, I kind of feel like I need a specific example. Someone is, I mean, if I'm, um, say at work, someone is hurting me. Like, how is someone hurting me? Maybe someone is spreading lies about me to the other colleagues at the office. Can I approach that person and say, look, I know you're telling lies about me. Please don't do that. Rather than going to the boss and saying, hey, it's not true, fire that guy. We can say, hey, we can try. I don't know. Ignoring may be difficult. If everybody's whispering about all the bad things I did that I didn't do, how do I ignore? Yes. We're a little lucky, we monks, because we are in the monastery. We get arguments with each other, but we typically don't come down to that level of backstabbing and things like that. but we have our politics in the monastery too. So yeah, I see the good qualities. Yes, we can see. We all, each one of us is a mix of good and bad qualities. That's a great idea. So we can be a fault finder, or we can be a good finder. And the great saints, they say they can see an ocean of goodness in a drop. You see one drop and there's an ocean of goodness. And that's how it's said that's how God sees. If we do 99 good things and one bad thing for a person, the person will forget all the 99 good things and remember the one bad thing. But God is the opposite. If we do 99 bad things and one good thing, then God remembers that one good thing, forgets the 99 bad things. So oh yes, at the very moment of, that's why we have to be careful. No, Sri Ramakrishna does caution us, live carefully. Be a little careful. With a wicked person, with people who had strong tempers and were very aggressive, he would be very respectful. They would come to his room, so he would stand up and say, yes, sir, how are you? Would you like a smoke? Try to be, because he didn't want to get his mind upset. So that way he would say, be careful about stray dogs and things like that. And he would say, caution us to live carefully. Yes, if a wicked man may do us harm, we may have to assent to what he says. Sri Ramakrishna says, that's in the gospel. You may have to assent to what he says, because a big person with lots of money, he could file a false lawsuit against you. It may be better just to assent to what he says, and yes, sir, and have a smoke and that kind of thing. Yes, uncle. Or someone who's drunk, call him uncle and praise his grandchildren, and then he'll be very happy. So he gives some worldly wisdom also in the gospel. All right, let's read a little more about Bhakti Yoga. This love cannot be reduced to any earthly benefit, because so long as worldly desires last, that kind of love does not come. And then we get into the different kinds of love, and that highest love knows no bargaining. It's not that I love you, so you should give me. I love you, God, so you should give me a promotion. I love you, God, so you should break my boss's leg, no, that's not love. Love means just love without expecting anything in return. So bhakti is greater than karma, greater than yoga, because these are intended for an object in view, while bhakti is its own fruition, its own means, and its own end. This is the unique thing of the bhakti path, is that bhakti, though we say that the goal is union with God, but in a sense, the goal in Bhakti Yoga is to attain bhakti, is to attain love, is to attain that love for God, which is the same. God is love. So when we attain that intense love, we attain God. And in the other paths, the practices are different from the goal. In the Jnana Yoga, we have our practice of Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. We have our practice of Viveka and all of that. And then when we attain the goal is moksha. And in yoga, it means meditation, we practice the stilling the mind and focusing and calming the mind and making it one-pointed. And the fruit is direct experience of the divine. But in Bhakti Yoga, we practice loving God and we try to increase that love until it becomes so great that it completely fills our being. And only love remains, and we attain the madness of that supreme love. So the path and the goal are the same in Bhakti Yoga. That's the uniqueness of Bhakti Yoga. And Swami Vivekananda often, he brings these together in his unique way. In fact, he would say that the goal is a harmonious development of all of these yogas. I'm reminded of Swami Swahanandaji. Some of you remember him. He always struck me as being a kind of a jnani, as being quite a philosophical type. And one day I asked him, so Maharaj, when you were doing your sadhana, did you practice jnana yoga? These traditional practices of analysis, of discernment, and that kind of thing. And he said, in the way he would always say these things, if he was saying something about himself, he wouldn't use the first person. He would say, yes, for some time that was the primary attitude. Not that, yes, I did something. Yes, for some time that was the primary attitude. But then he immediately he added, but with devotion, of course. So that was interesting. With devotion, of course. So, what do I mean by love? True selfless love? Well, you mentioned that you have tasted it. You have tasted it as a child with your mother. Okay, so it exists. So it may be hard to find in human relationships. Absolutely, and Vivekananda even says whether that supreme love can be found in human relationships. We're not sure. There are different levels of love. But what the lowest level of love? I love you, but I don't care about you, actually. I love you for what you do for me. And I love you because you bring me joy. I don't care if you're happy or unhappy or anything else. I only love you because it's a very selfish love. Then there's a kind of mutual love. And that kind of love is what we see mostly in say, marital relationships, probably. I love you, but at least I expect you also will love me, and I respect you, I love you, and at least in a healthy, good marriage, there's a very strong bond of love, and it goes both ways. But true, there's some expectations also involved in that. I will respect you, but you will also respect me. I will stick with you, and you will also stick with me. We've made a mutual pledge to each other. We're going to walk the whole life together in love. And then there's this divine love. The third phase of love is like the mother and her child. No matter what the baby does, she loves the baby. right? Just that unconditional love. No matter if the baby soils the diaper, the mother is happy to clean it because it's her own child. Doesn't mind. My mom told me that, her own baby's poop didn't stink. Why? Because she loves them so much. I mean, it's a little crude, but it's true. I mean, I think many women find it's true. They love their child so much that they're not offended by that. But somebody else's child, we think, that we feel uncomfortable. But our own child, we don't feel that. Why? Because there's so much love. There's no selfishness in it. We only want the well-being of the child. Then the child starts to grow up and get its own ego, and then my ego and the child's ego start to clash, and then that completely unselfish, one unidirectional love that starts to fade away. So can it be attained in our human relationships? Maybe, by some saints. Say the way Sri Ramakrishna used to love his disciples. People, each of his disciples used to feel, he loved me best. How is that possible? Because he was that reservoir of love, that infinite love that was not seeking anything in return. So, yeah, we've already gone into questions, so it's quite all right. Because I kind of envisioned this as being a somewhat informal gathering. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I didn't hear this statement. I used to think, oftentimes it seems like especially Christianity emphasizes God's love for human beings. I find that in Hinduism, in Vedanta, don't you think? That emphasis on God loves us, Jesus is love, God loves us. But in Hinduism, the emphasis is more on how much do we love God. So actually both are true, and that's a beautiful contribution of the Christian tradition also, that God is love. And Swami Vivekananda even will say, God is love. If you see a cat loving its kittens, stand and pray. God is manifest before you there. Wherever we see love, as you're suggesting, wherever we see love, that's a manifestation of the divine, because God is love. But here, the emphasis in Bhakti Yoga is on transforming our hearts so that they become a pure channel for that infinite love, which is the divine, which is lying deep within us already, is one way to put it. We're learning to purify our hearts and purify our love so that it becomes more and more. Yes, if God is love, then there's no being, no ant that God does not love, because God is love. That's one attitude we can take. Who? Oh, Gandhi. Uh-huh.
Maybe they meant that how much we can perceive that God is having. I think just for example, how you see that even walking and talking, you feel God's power, but not everybody feels that way.
Mm.
So it's just the perception extent of like perceiving God's power is different for everybody, and maybe that's why they were talking about God and love differently too. Also, you are saying about the perception, yeah. It just depends on how much we are involved, and then we can feel the love and everything. Sometimes people even feel like, oh, God doesn't love me. That's why I got this accident, and because the mind is not that much involved to see the love of God and perception and
If we get a taste of divine love, then we feel that how much vaster is the divine love than any love that we ever had. It becomes overwhelming that that divine love is like infinite, and oh, I thought I loved, but actually it's only a drop compared to that ocean of love. Inexpressible, anirvacaniyam. Yes, inexpressible love. Swami, let me read you a little one of my favorite definitions of religion from Swami Vivekananda. And this is written in his letter to Mary Hale. He says, the infinite, the omnipresent, the eternal, the infinite, the omnipresent, the omniscient is a principle, not a person. He's giving the Vedantic description. You and I and everyone are but embodiments of that principle. And the more of this infinite principle is embodied in a person, the greater is he or she. And all in the end will be the perfect embodiment of that. And thus all will be one, as they are now essentially. This is all there is of religion. And the practice is through this feeling of oneness that is love. So first, he reminds us of the Vedantic idea that the ground of our existence, the absolute reality, is a principle. It's a principle of an eternal, infinite, omnipresent, omniscient principle. And we are all embodiments of that. But we are all embodiments of that, and yet it manifests more in some than in others. And what makes someone great is the greater amount of that manifestation. It means they love more, they have more compassion, they have more wisdom, they have more peace, and we feel that in their presence. That is what makes for the difference between people, is the degree of manifestation of that infinite principle which is embodied in all of us. And then he tells us beautifully, all will be perfect embodiments of that. It means this is called Sarva Mukti. This, in English, we call it universal salvation. No one is left out. This is a Vedanta principle. In Vedanta, there's no eternal hell. We have our hells. Maybe there's 7 of them, or 6 or 7 of them, each one worse than the other. But they're not eternal. We are all destined to know our true self. We will all know. And then he says, thus all will be one, as they are now. Essentially, it means essentially, in truth, we are already one, but we're not aware of it. And yet we are all guaranteed to reach. And then, this is how I love how he comes back to love. He says, this is all there is of religion, and the practice. He's describing a real jnana type description, right? The infinite principle, we're all embodiments of that. Then the practice, what's the practice? The feeling of oneness that is love. So here he defines love as a feeling of oneness and gives us that practice to love. And Vivekananda wouldn't say, he would say, yes, love God, but love all. Here is God before you. In every being is the God before you. Love God. And he asks in his, so this was in the letter to Mary Hill, in his letter to Goodwin, he writes, one letter he wrote to Goodwin, we Vedantists in every difficulty ought to ask the subjective question, why do I see that? Why can I not conquer this with love? That's so if you have someone hurting you in the office, okay, can you ask yourself the question, why can I not conquer this with love? It's a difficult question. That's what Swamiji asks us to do. Why can I not conquer this with love? Give a candy. That might work. In some cases, that works. Huh? It works. You can't bring candy to the office? Oh, money. Indifference is better. We had. I mean, it's true. Sometimes we do these things. One of our Swamis, our Shiva Maharaj, was in went to one of those skilled nursing facilities, and someone suggested to me. So I brought 2 boxes of really nice chocolates. Those Rocher, those Rocher chocolates. 2 big, big. Just picked them up at Target or something, and we went there. And I went to the nurse's station. I said, I want to, I'm so, happy you're taking such good care of our brother. I want to distribute these to the nurses. And so they were also very happy. And everybody on the floor, all the employees, they got one of these chocolates. And that was, was it an entirely unselfish action? No. I wanted them to take good care of our Swami. So I brought that. But it also brought some joy to them. And it also brought some joy to me, but it wasn't, there was that was a shopkeeping, I'll admit it. uh, uh, yeah.
They're so happy. They come everyone come. Can I get one?
Stolen candy, no less. Okay, well, good. So we've been sitting now for almost an hour. I think we can do well to have a little break. After this, we can talk a little bit about the 2 remaining yogas of the 4 are meditation and work, and then I think it'll be nice to take up a couple of dig a little deeper into two areas. One is prayer, because I come back to this because Sri Ramakrishna emphasized it so much, and maybe also a couple of hints from my own practice on meditation. So let's take a little break of maybe 15 minutes. I did set the kettle boiling so we could have some tea and there's a watermelon. Maybe we can cut that watermelon. And so we'll ring a bell in 15 minutes.